Call the Board of Supervisors to order. Good morning, everyone. May I have a roll call, please, Ms. Rowland?
Supervisor Diomi.
Present.
Supervisor White.
Here.
Supervisor Jones.
Present.
Supervisor Schutte.
Here.
Mayor Bagwell.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We're now going to move to agenda item 3, which is our invocation. And I think I saw Ben coming in from our Silver Sage Church. We haven't seen you in a while. We're so glad to have you.
Would you pray with me this morning? Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this day. This is the day that you have made, and we shall rejoice and be glad in it. We thank you, Father, for this city that you have given to us. Lord, we thank you, Father, for the prosperity in our city. We thank you for the welfare of our city, and we do pray, Father, for Carson City, and we ask, God, for your continued blessing. And Lord, this morning we come, and the Bible tells us is that if any of us lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith with not doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. And Father, so we do pray, Father, for your leaders this morning, that you would give them wisdom, that you would give them wisdom in their decisions. You give them wisdom as they discuss the important matters of our city, that you would give them wisdom, Father, as they decide, and wisdom that as they look at all of that is going on in our city, that they would decide how to give leadership to our city and all that goes on here. Lord, we love you and we thank you, Father, and we ask these things in the name of our Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. It was so good to have you back. We're now going to move to agenda item 4, which is our Pledge of Allegiance. Who would like? Okay, Jason loves the Constitution, and that's coming up pretty soon for that celebration. Would you lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate that. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 5, which is our public comment period. I just want to make an announcement, just so it's quick while everyone's here. The 9/11 memorial will be on 9/11 at 1 o'clock, because it is actually a Sunday. So we'll let everyone get to church. So please mark your calendars for 1 o'clock at Mills Park. The Calgary Church is going to provide hot dogs and stuff this time for a good celebration. So just want to put that out on the record. I show Andrew Quinn would like to make a public comment. Come on.
Hi, my name is Andrew Quinn. I live here in Carson City. Last year, I went to the library and I donated this book, Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, to the library. I gave it to him at the front desk. Now, this book is a classic. It's sold over 2 million copies since it's been written. I was back in the library about 3-4 weeks after that, and I went to the stacks to see if this book was in the collection yet, and it wasn't. So I looked it up on the card catalog, and it wasn't there. So I went to the desk, and I said, I donated a book here several weeks ago, and I don't see it in the collection. And they said, well, we probably gave it to Browser's Corner, the used bookstore across the street. I said, I didn't want it to go to Browser's Corner. I wanted it to be in the collection here for everybody to use, to check out. And they said, well, it's not that easy. And I said, well, it should be. I'm donating a book to my public library. I've donated books to other libraries in the past, and they were grateful to have them. They put them in the collection, and they're still there. Now, I got a copy yesterday of their procedure for giving gifts, and I think the one, number B, under gifts, it says materials will be added to the collection only if they meet the same standards required for purchased materials. Now, I don't know what those standards are, but this book, 2 million copies have been sold of this book. This book should be in our library, especially when somebody donates it. So I understand that the library came down here and asked for some more money for more books and materials. And I would ask that you not give them any more money until you get some definitions of these terms and find out why a classic book like this is given to Browser's Corner instead of put in their collection. So that's all I had to say. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Just a thought, Mr. Quinn. Did you go to the library board meeting? They
No,
have a board of trustees that can discuss this item with you.
I will,
Yeah,
but
I think
since
it's a
you
good
guys,
idea.
since you guys
Yeah.
are talking funding with the library, I wanted to make you aware of it too.
I really appreciate that. Just so you know, on the funding for books, when you do some federal money and participate in some grant things, there's a threshold that we have to do in the purchase of books.
Right.
So, but I welcome your thoughts this morning and just really recommend you go to the Board of Trustees to get that criteria.
Okay, thanks,
I think
Mayor.
it's important. Thank you very much. Mhm. Okay, perfect timing. Okay, I didn't have it, oh. Late, okay, come on up, Denny. Morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Supervisors. Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I'm here to bring up my views on number 8C, which relates to the new RAP program suggested through the Sheriff's Office as an alternative way to restrain individuals. And I'm also looking today to talk about the Bud-I property land and how that will proceed. So I'm looking to hear more about that. I'm also here about number 15, which is related to the hemp and the property over by the Buzzy Ranch areas. And I think those things will be brought up later in my comments after I've heard some of the review.
8C will not, it's on the consent. Is there something specific that you're
8C?
needing on that?
Well, I just wanted to support it. I know it's a new technology, and I know that we're looking for new ways to relate to people more humanely and such, and I'd like to support this. I did have questions about the units and how much each were cost, but I was able to find that in the full
All right,
statements. Thank
so
you
we'll
very
put you on
much.
record for support for 8C.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. I don't have anyone else signed up, but just one last call for any public comment. Okay, I don't see any. Then we're going to move on to agenda item 6, which is the approval of our minutes from July 7th. Supervisor Giomi, did you have a suggestion for correction?
Yeah, Mayor, first, there was a correction on, at the 8:51:50 mark. On line 2, there's 2 and thes back to back. So one of those should be stricken. And then the other item is in relationship to the motion that Supervisor Jones made regarding item 16A. The motion on the minute shows up at 10:23:48. I talked to the DA's office, looked at the video, and I feel like the motion as it's written there doesn't capture what was said. We're missing a part about talking about retaining the original funds for the pavilion, and I think that's kind of missing in here. And as I read it, I feel like if someone looked at it in a couple of years, they wouldn't get that by reading the motion. So I'd like to suggest that the motion read, Supervisor Jones moved to approve the request with the funding coming from the Centennial Park General Fund CIP allocation and to retain the original funds for the pavilion. The motion was seconded by Supervisor White. So I move to approve the meeting minutes for July 7th, 2022 with those 2 corrections.
Was there a second? Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to our consent agenda. We are going to table item 8A and move it to the next meeting's agenda. It just has one little gap to be addressed, just to double check out of caution. So is there anything else on the consent agenda? If not, I'll accept a motion for approval of the consent agenda with the exception of 8A.
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of items 7A, 8B, 8C, 8D, 8E, 8F, period.
Period, end of story. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. All righty, we are now going to move on to agenda item 10, which is discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of a member to our advisory board to manage wildlife to fill the at-large position to represent the general public. The term will expire in July of 2024. I believe Mr. Wilson is here. Hi, come on up. Have you ever been through this process before?
Thank you, Mayor Bagwell. I have not. My first time applying for the Wildlife Board. I could go through a little bit about who I am if you like.
I'll tell you
or-
what we're going to do then, just since you haven't been exposed to that. What we do is each of us generally asks a question or two. And you get the pleasure of trying to answer our questions, and then you can even do follow-up comments yourself. And I always get to start with a question, and it's going to go right where you want to go, I believe. So tell me why you want the position and you're a good fit for it.
Okay. So I saw the article in Carson Now, and I certainly have been interested in wildlife my entire life. I was born here in Carson City. My family goes back quite a ways, and as with, I would say, many native Nevadans, we do enjoy hunting and fishing, and it's been a big part of my life, and I would like to get involved now that I have time, since I am recently retired from the state of Nevada.
Congratulations. Now we have to put them to work. Super, you go back to work, you realize that, but now you're not going to get paid.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's true. Supervisor Giomi, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. Love to hear your thoughts on the urban wildlife that we have here in our community, and how we as a community interface and deal with that, from coyotes to bear to deer.
It's certainly interesting, the transition we've had in, say, the last 10 years or so, with so much wildlife seems to be in the city. When I was a kid here in Carson City, we never saw a bear or a lion or a deer in town. They were on the edge of town. You could go to the foothills, but there were certainly no urban deer wandering around town. And now I am on the, I call it the West Side Forum. It's a little forum, community forum for people that live on basically the west side of Carson City, west side of Reno. And the number of wildlife encounters is amazing. And with the advent of Ring cameras and security cameras, there are bear sightings every day. It seems like bobcats, mountain lions. Certainly we see deer everywhere throughout the city. See them right on the Capitol grounds, downtown Carson City. So it's certainly a big issue, because it can cause a lot of conflicts. So we do see, comments from citizens that, a bobcat was chasing my little dog. My, garbage cans have been turned over and inside out. I had a bear at my house, and I live pretty close to Mountain Street, which I consider the center of town. I had a bear come through, jumped on my fence, broke down my fence, dumped my garbage all over. It's a big conflict, and I think wildlife right now does a pretty good job with the bears. They do a capture program for problem bears, and then do a deterrent with dogs and I call them pop guns, to try to discourage the bears. They will relocate. Unfortunately, if it's an extreme problem, they do euthanize the bears, and I do believe in those circumstances, it's justified. They do what they can to not do that, but they do have to euthanize some bears, and there is a bear hunting season, which I realize is a bit controversial, but none of the doom and gloom that was predicted over that has come forth. It certainly provides at least a small control on the population, but we still see plenty of bears all over. And for the deer, one of the big conflicts right now that I see for Carson City is hunting along the edges of the city, and that's a big issue. I think clearer regulations on what is a firearm and where that firearm can be discharged and how close to dwellings, those are all big issues that wildlife needs to consider.
Supervisor White, did you have a question?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. Regarding the sage hen and feral horse issues, what do you suppose is the future of Nevada's public lands?
Well, for sage hen, we certainly, I think we've done a good job at making sure the numbers are there for sage hen, that it doesn't go on the endangered species list, which could lock up a large amount of Nevada's land. As my job at the state, I was not directly involved. I was at Water Resources, but our Department of Natural Resource and Conservation had a sage hen committee, and they are doing a lot of work on ensuring that we don't end up with sage hen being declared an endangered species. That's the biggest issue, because that would trigger all kinds of regulations that would be adverse to us being able to use land for mining, which Nevada's has a big economy in mining. For instance, for the cattlemen that range on public land, which is also a big issue for Nevada and a big resource for Nevada. So I think we've headed the right direction on sage hen. Your other question was on horses, and unfortunately, it's really out of our control for the most part. They're on federal lands mostly, and when they're on federal lands, they have the wild horse and burro protection, and it makes it very difficult for a state agency such as Division of Wildlife, when they don't have authority over those animals to manage them themselves. They have to manage them through an agency like the Bureau of Land Management.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Jones?
Well, my question was going to be how you felt about the wild horse situation. I agree with you in part. I think as a member of the Wildlife Commission, you have influence over it. Do you agree with that? You have some influence to BLM and whoever else?
I do. I think especially in terms of the way BLM manages the horses, is they have HMAs, which are herd management areas. Right. And those herd management areas have a certain number of animals that are allowed on that area of land so that it's sustainable. And they often exceed those numbers, in some cases dramatically, and they often because horses don't know what a boundary is. They often go into other areas where there is no herd management area. And we can certainly press the BLM to adhere to their own standards of controlling the wild horses, and I think that is an important role for Division of Wildlife.
Thank you.
Supervisor Schutte? Hello, and thank you for applying. I actually have two questions. One is, what do you believe is a priority in regards to wildlife management?
Well, certainly one of the priorities is recreation for our citizens. We do manage diverse wildlife. It's not just big game. It's not just hunting. It's not just fishing. It's all types of wildlife recreation, whether it be bird watching or just people being out in nature, exploring, and managing all types of wildlife species. So we don't end up with areas, denuded of wildlife. We want diverse wildlife. We have a fairly fragile ecosystem here in Nevada because we are so dry. We're a very arid state, one of the driest in the nation. We usually argue with New Mexico over whether they're the driest or we're the driest, but we get about 10 inches of rain per year. It's not much, so our areas, our riparian areas are very fragile. They're small in number, and I think for Division of Wildlife, it's a big task managing the state's wildlife, and I think it is important as they have expanded. They used to be just the Department of Fish and Game. They're now the Department of Wildlife, and I think that's appropriate that their mission has expanded.
Thank you, and that is the perfect segue to my next question, so thank you. Do you feel that, and I have a feeling you do from what you just said, that there's an opportunity to educate our community and folks in the outdoors to be better stewards on how to live with wildlife and among wildlife and protect it?
I certainly do, and Division of Wildlife has some nice programs, and they do some educational work. I'd like to see them expand that if they can. But we have to interact with all kinds of wildlife. Recently, as I mentioned, the forum I like talked about rattlesnakes. Right now, we're seeing a lot of rattlesnakes show up, and they serve a purpose. They shouldn't just be killed. They should be, put back to the areas where they're not in conflict with people. Obviously, you can't have them living in your garage, but they serve an important purpose. If we didn't have them, then we might get overrun with mice. Then we'd have that issue to deal with. It's important to have a balance and have people be aware of wildlife and the importance of wildlife. And I think continuing educational opportunities to, especially for kids, is because they're very impressionable when they're young, and I think we could put them on a good path to, having positive interactions with the diverse wildlife we have here in Nevada.
Great. Thank you so much, and I so appreciate your thoughtful answers. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, that concludes the part we have. Do you have any final words you want to say, or we can make a motion?
I'll just be really brief. I hope you'll consider me favorably for the position. I certainly will take it seriously and work with the current board members and the Department of Wildlife, who's, I know many of those people through my work as the head of Division of Water Resources at the end of my career. So I certainly know them, and I know I can work with them, and have worked with them on state issues in the past. So I look forward to it, and I think that's all I have.
Thank you so much. And again, we all very much appreciate that you applied. It's important for citizen input, and we need you. So thank you so very much. With that, I see Supervisor Giomi. Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, ma'am. Comment first. I just, I've sat through a lot of these interviews in the past nearly 4 years. And I have to tell you, Mr. Wilson, you're one of the top 1 or 2 candidates in terms of well-rounded and perfect fit for this position. You did a fantastic job, and very impressed. And so I thank you for applying. And I gladly will move to appoint Tim Wilson to the citizen at large position for a term that will expire in July of 2024.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect the motion was unanimous. We welcome you and thank you again so very much. And then the word is, I'm glad you're retired so you can get to work helping us.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank
Really,
you.
Thank you. Okay. We are going to now move on to agenda item number 11A, which is discussion and possible action regarding a contract for internal audit services with Eide Bailey. I'm going to do a disclosure. NRS 281A 420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. This agenda item involves a 3-year contract between Carson City and Eide Bailey for internal audit services. My son is a partner at Eide Bailey. He does not have any direct involvement in Carson City audits. However, because he is a partner, he could conceivably have a pecuniary interest, money, in any Eide Bailey venture, and Eide Bailey will receive payments from the city if this contract is approved. The independence of judgment of a reasonable person in my position could be materially affected by this relationship. Therefore, I consider this to be a disqualifying conflict, and I will not be voting on this matter. Mayor Pro Tem Giomi, will you please handle this item for me?
Absolutely, Mayor. Thank you. All right, board members, do you have any comments or questions for staff on this agenda item? All right, if not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Eide Bailey contract as presented.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? And note 1 abstention. So motion passes 4 with 1 abstention. Mayor, I'll turn the gavel back over.
Thank you, Supervisor Giomi. I appreciate that. Clear. Okay, we're now going to move on to agenda item 12A, which is discussion and possible action proposing a resolution concerning the financing and infrastructure project, directing the Carson City Clerk Recorder to notify the Carson City Debt Management Commission of the city's proposal to issue general obligation infrastructure sales tax bonds for $5,550,000 and providing the details therein. Ms. Russell is on this item. Briefly tell us about the proposed project, please.
Yes, this, excuse me, this is for the William Street Corridor project. We've been talking about the corridor projects for quite some time, and this is the funding for that sales tax infrastructure, that little 1/8 of a cent that we get for the sales tax. And again, this has been planned as part of that sales tax funding, doing another bond to pay for this William Street corridor.
Does any member have a question on our bond? Doesn't mean we're going to issue, it's just permission to go to the debt commission to look at it. Any public comment on this item? Just to double check. Again, don't see anyone signed up, but best to always answer. Or
I do
ask.
have our bond consultant and bond counsel here if you have any questions.
We're getting pretty used to these. Okay, I see a motion. Supervisor White?
Thank you. I would just like to thank staff over the many years as this has been discussed, I have chimed in repeatedly on this particular project. So I thank you, staff, for your patience fielding my questions and comments. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-R-27.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. The motion carried unanimously. We want to keep our debt down. You know that's why we didn't ask you any questions, right? They cost a lot of money, you guys. Thank you all so very much. Have a good day. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 13A, which is discussion and possible action regarding a proposed resolution to subordinate our interests for the development agreement on our Butte Way project for our reasonable housing, affordable housing project. We have quite the team up here today. Mr. Stuckey, you're going to talk to us about this subordination?
I will. Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, this, as you mentioned, subordination agreement between the city and Western Alliance Business Trust, who's a lender for the developer on the Phase 1 property. I want to make clear we're only talking about the Phase 1 property today. We have not developed that Phase 2 development agreement yet, but we expect that to come forward probably in the next couple of months. This agreement would subordinate the city's interests in the property to the lender. The board is allowed to subordinate its interests if it determines that subordination is necessary to promote investment in the construction of this affordable housing project that's in NRS. I was going to have Adam Tolley, we did have some late material. I was going to have him provide a high-level overview of the agreement as well as the changes between the late material and what was loaded up earlier. And then we do have the development team over here that I was hoping that if you're willing to give a little update on the project and where they're at with the financing and construction bidding and timeline for construction, if you're willing to do that. So I'll turn over to Adam.
Mr. Tolley.
Yeah, hi, Adam Tully from the District Attorney's Office. Just, I guess, broad strokes, the subordination agreement. Well, let's start here. The city has two documents that protect its interest in the property after it's conveyed. The first is the development agreement that's already been enacted by ordinance. The second is a restrictive covenant that is not yet in effect because the property hasn't been conveyed just yet, but will be recorded and in effect when the property is conveyed. So the important thing to keep in mind here is the subordination agreement affects the development agreement only. So the restrictive covenant, regardless of whether the subordination agreement is accepted by this board or not, will remain first priority. If the subordination agreement is accepted, second priority will be the lender's mortgage. Third priority will be the development agreement. In terms of how the subordination agreement would impact the development agreement, the principal impact is that we couldn't, without the lender's consent, the city would not be able to have the property revert for a default under the development agreement. I think that the biggest item there the biggest right we'd lose out on is reversion for failure to meet construction deadlines, right? But we can enforce other portions of the development agreement through normal, through the building department, through lots of other mechanisms. But enforcement that would impact the mortgage, we can't do that through the development agreement. We can enforce the restrictive covenant, no qualifications there. So, and in terms of what the rights that we still have and can enforce through the through the restrictive covenant, the 51-year affordable housing affordability period, there can be no subordination or assignment of the property or subordination of our interest or assignment of the property without this board's approval. The number of rent-restricted units is set in the restrictive covenant. The affordability guidelines are set in the restrictive covenant. And the restrictive covenant does give us some enforcement mechanisms as well. So in terms of just real-world impact, if the lender finds itself in a position where it's got to foreclose on the property, what that means is the development agreement's gone. The new owner will take the property free of the development agreement. They will take it subject to our restrictive covenant and the 51-year affordability period.
So just as a general question, the risk factor to us as the city is really the construction period. Because once the project's actually built, all the restrictive covenants come in and they'll have to have the tenants at the right rent rates and all of the other things that we're interested in is protected. So our risk factor is, and this is where you can jump in, the construction period anticipated from the time you take the loan to the actual, construction with a certificate of occupancy. That's our, what is that?
Sure. I'm Michael Snodgrass with the Oikos Development Corporation. We're the nonprofit development managing member. The construction period is typically about 18 months. We hope to shave that a little bit, of course, if we can, because time is money on these deals. So you got to get it done as quickly as possible, and that's why you go through all these pre-development activities that we've already undertaken, including we spent roughly $500,000 of our own cash to get to all the architectural engineering permitting stages so that we can kind of hit the ground running. So, but yeah, 18 months is typical for two buildings of this nature.
And then if we were to do this, where do you believe the first shovel is going to happen so that we can understand the potential exposure? And then I'll come back to our
Sure,
attorney for a
we're in
question.
final permitting now. I know that the different departments have been providing comments back and forth with our construction team, so we're hoping to be permit ready even by tomorrow. I mean, we're thinking no later than the following week. We're moving towards a hard closing date of 8/26. This is one of those steps to get us there. In order to do that, and then shortly thereafter, we've already discussed possibly having a groundbreaking event to celebrate the start of the construction. We have subcontractors on standby. We're always looking for more bids, so if
there's anybody out there.
yeah, so if anybody's looking, especially heating and cooling, we need heating and
Might as well
cooling
put your pitch
contractors.
out. Yeah.
So it's hard right now with the way the delays have been, partly because of interest rates that have gone up nationwide. A lot of projects got caught in this, and so we had to go back and get additional tax credits from the state. The state has been generous enough to provide those tax credits as we need to get this project across the finish line. And their mandate is get to construction quickly, and that's ours as well. So we are looking forward to moving as quickly as possible to get this thing started.
So, Mr. Tully, if we get to month 12, they're 3/4 of the way done with the construction, but they can't finish it, then this particular bank would foreclose to try to recover their $2 million. I mean, that's what the objective is, right? The bank wants the authority to recover their $2 million. Do the restrictive covenants for them to recover their $2 million, whomever they're going to sell that property right to, will have to complete the project and do the, right? Because they have to complete the project to live up to the restricted covenants. That's really the crux for me to know that this is a good idea for the city, because right? Whoever buys it has to do the affordable housing.
So I don't know that we can compel anyone to complete construction, but at least my interpretation of how affordability period is defined in these documents is it's 51 years, the later of which is either a date certain or 51 years after certificate of occupancy is issued. So,
Not a lot of choice.
Yeah. So,
Okay, I just want to make sure we're protecting the project and the purpose of I don't anticipate that you're going to default, because that's why I asked the questions, that you're ready to go. but I need to know what the protection is to accomplish the project. The other thing is obviously the bank could renegotiate with us some other agreements and things too, but I just looking for the
If I can
protection. You may.
interject, the project requires both from the lender and from the state a full P&P bond of the
To finish it?
contractor. So the project will get built.
Oh, it has a performance bond?
Yes.
Oh, I like that. Okay. I see Supervisor Giomi, you have a question?
I was just going to mention that performance bond because I remember that discussion and that there is a performance bond in here. So really, I think the risk is minimal. Obviously, the construction period is the risk period, but with the restrictive covenants, even if they default and something happens to the bond, which is not likely, the land can only be used for what we've declared it to be used for. So the bank is going to have to negotiate with someone to get completion because they're not ever going to get their money back otherwise. And so there really would be nothing preventing the city from stepping in at that point to pay the bond and turn around and sell the project again, correct? I mean, assuming the bank would accept money from us, I don't know why they wouldn't accept money from anybody.
They don't care.
But,
Yeah.
you know, there's nothing restricting that is what I'm asking, right? I'm not saying we would do it, but would there be any restrictions for us stepping in, satisfying that bond, and then turning around and managing it ourselves?
I don't know if I can answer that shooting from the hip.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
fair enough.
Um,
I mean, it seems
nothing
reasonable.
nothing
that-
jumps to
Yes.
mind.
Yeah, it seems reasonable that
But-
we could. I mean, obviously, we'd have work to do that, and I don't know that we'd want to do it, but,
The option.
you know, it is an option. So anyway, thank you.
I don't see any other questions. So other than maybe on September 1st, having a groundbreaking, I mean, like, we're ready, right?
We are, correct, we're ready.
Okay, all right, thank you. I don't see that anyone else has any questions. I'll accept public comment on this item. I think I heard that Mr. French wanted to ask a question or say something about this in his earlier.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you very much, supervisors and board. I'm concerned that we gave the property away, and that was understood some time ago. And I am also concerned that in the turnaround time, that properties have succeeded my expectations of value, and that now the city could have made a nice bit of money off of it, which could have been used for whatever. But at this point, we have, I don't think, enough protections for the city. You have stated several times as a board that you didn't want to become landlords. We are looking at that possibility. You're also looking at an extended amount of bond amounts that you would have to pay to then pick up, and then amounts that you would have to do to restore or continue development. And I don't think enough protections have been put in for the city taxpayers involved in this situation on the long term. I'm all for affordable housing. Each rental, each location that's selling or leasing or any place that's accepting rent for a property has the ability to allow a person that has a certificate of support from an agency like HUD or Section 8. They can accept low-income individuals. And with that acceptance, they are getting protections from those organizations to make sure that the individual's qualified, make sure that the rent would be completed, the subsidies would be paid to the owners and the renters. So no one's missing out by becoming assistance to the low-income individual. If they're in a qualified situation, they're going to get the support of the organization that's qualified them. So it's a win-win for a person needing a tenant and getting a person that's stuck to pay a certain amount of it, and then the state or the city would cover the rest, or donations or such would. But my concern in this case is that one of the things that was brought up today was becoming perhaps a landlord or picking up after part of development or failed, finding someone to take over. And I just don't think that's been covered, and perhaps that just hadn't been asked by y'all, but I didn't find it in the material as anything making me feel safe about this for the community. 51 years sounds great, but we've decided that perpetuity doesn't count. Amount of years probably will fall by the wayside too if the circumstances change as such. for conditions. Well, perpetuity has fallen before in this community. Something was said to be in perpetuity, then was changed because of circumstances. I believe that was with Fuji Park and other situations. And my consideration is that giving away property has developed all these other considerations that I don't think we needed to try to get real affordable housing into Carson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have you're ready to make a motion, Mr. Jones? Okay, just on the record, though, as a final comment, because I don't want to leave what Mr. French indicated just out there. First of all, finding landlords willing to accept a HUD voucher is almost impossible. They are readily available, and we have hundreds of them in Carson City that have been granted, and there is no landlord that will accept them. The reason is the fair market rents that are on there for that price tag is nowhere near what the landlord can get. So a landlord for a 3-bedroom apartment or house right now is charging $1,500-1,700 a month. If they take a voucher, they're going to get $800 to $900 a month. So they're not willing to do it. It takes a particular parcel and a particular project that is aimed at taking affordable housing vouchers and sliding scales. They need help to get done. There's just no, I'm not going to say there isn't anyone that's benevolent, because that's not true. There are benevolent people. But on the spectrum, we have hundreds of people that need help. We do have assistance to give them, but we have to have a willing person on the other end to take that voucher. So I'm very comfortable with this deal. The discussion that we were having for the protections is our due diligence that this board takes very seriously, which is why we went through what is every option that a worst case scenario. And we want to, I hate to say that, we have to assume that it won't work, right? That's our job up here. If it's not going to work, what is the protection? And I feel very comfortable that the city is protected, that we will have an affordable housing project, which is the ultimate goal of that particular parcel. For some of us, some don't want to sell it or want to do it under the guise that you want to sell it, get the most money, and do something else with it. I can't think of anything more that I would do with that money than to help people have a roof over their head that they can afford. And so for me, I'm going to be able to support this because I think it's a true need in our community. And we've been working on this project for years to make it right. We did not do it in a 1-month guess, or we haven't been hurried. We've poured a lot of hours into development agreements, into attorney time. I think this is something the board has worked very, very hard at to protect both the taxpayers in general, but to also help those in need in our community. So I'm going to be supporting it for that reason. Supervisor White?
Thank you. Indeed, this does look like a pretty good project. And it is, again, one of those projects that staff has had to endure my comments and questions. While I have no objection to this project in general, I continue to object to the gifting of the taxpayers' property, and I will not be supporting this agenda item.
Okay. Supervisor Jones, a motion, please.
I move to adopt resolution number 2022 R-28.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please
Mayor?
say, oh,
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Just a quick point of
to the version was the late material, just for the record, right?
Right.
Yes.
To
Yeah.
include them. Yeah, I'm
Right.
sorry.
Just, I knew what you wanted. Just, we like to say it just in case everyone's clear. It's not the posted, it's the late material. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
Let the record reflect the motion carried 4-1. Thank you all for your good work, and we cannot wait to shovel a little bit of dirt. You can't either. I like it. Okay. Thank you actually for sticking in there and not giving up. There you go. And hopefully in 18 months, 2 years, we'll have, sorry, those that are waiting to use their HUD vouchers, that you're going to wait that much longer, but it'll be and it'll be new, right? So it'll be great. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 14A, which is discussion and possible action on a 5-year contract to put our station alerting system in. Does any member of the board have any questions on this particular contract? No, is there any public comment on this contract? Seeing none, we're going to let you off the hook. I'll take a motion from Supervisor Giomi.
I move to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the contract as presented and to approve the expenditure of $115,000 from the 911 surcharge fund account for the contract as presented.
Second.
500? Okay, 500.
Sorry,
Thank you.
115,500. Thank you.
I want you to have your $500. That was necessary. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Thank you so very much. Okay, we're going to move. We're going to recess. I'm like, we're going here pretty fast, right? We're going to recess for our closed session with our attorneys. Pursuant to law, we may negotiate and discuss things with our attorney in private. So we're going to recess and we'll try and come back. Do you think we need how much time? 15 minutes? How about we'll be back by 1:45 for the public to hear item 15A and our final stuff. So we're in recess. Thank you. Board of Supervisors back to order. We're now on agenda item 15A, which is discussion and possible action regarding a proposed settlement offer in the amount of $400,000 for Tahoe Hemp LLC to settle all claims arising from litigation. I'll do a disclosure on this. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. This agenda item involves property located at 4900 Carson River Road. I live near that property. While I make this disclosure, however, NRS 281A.420 requires abstention only in clear cases. In this case, the Board of Supervisors' action on this agenda item will not affect me differently from any other similarly situated person, and the independence of judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be materially affected by the proximity of my residence. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter. Good morning. Mr. District Attorney Woodbury, would you give us the highlights of this, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item concerns litigation. The Carson City was named as a defendant in litigation that was initiated by an entity called Tahoe Hemp LLC. This board has been briefed on that litigation. It's currently pending on appeal with the Nevada Supreme Court. As part of the appeal process, there was a mandatory settlement conference that was attended by the city, represented by City Manager Nancy Paulson and Deputy District Attorney Ben Johnson. In the course of that settlement conference, a proposal for settlement was made following some negotiations. That settlement offer was presented as a best and final offer by Tahoe Hemp LLC. As our client, we're obligated to present the board with all settlement offers, regardless of how we necessarily feel about them. So this offer is presented in this agenda item for the reasons that we discussed in the preceding closed session with the board and in previous confidential communications. It would be the recommendation of the District Attorney's Office that you reject this settlement offer.
Thank you, Mr. Woodbury. Is there anyone else from the public or client that would like to discuss this matter? Please put your name on the record. There you go.
There we go. Good morning, Madam Mayor, good other board members. My name is Rick Campbell. I represent Tahoe Hemp. I'm with the law firm of Kemfer Kroll. I know I have some short time, and I want to make just a few salient points, I think, as to why this board should accept the settlement. First of all, I'm sure you've been fully briefed as to the nature of the summary judgment by Judge Wilson. I respect Judge Wilson. I think he's a good judge, but I think he got this one wrong. The cruxes of his case was that hemp production on that property would destroy the property and thus fall within the waste provisions of some of the contract provisions in there. And I don't think there's support in the record that that was going to be waste on the property. I think the second point I want to make is that this was a rush to judgment by staff to deny this permit. Just to read you a couple of emails that I think are salient. Ann Bollinger on June 19th, almost immediately after the Tahoe Hemp was starting to prepare the land, says the purchase and sale agreement reserves some rights during this transition, but I don't believe brush removal, grading, and potentially new crop plantings would be acceptable. It goes on, and then a later email from Lee Pennell to Ann Bollinger says Kathy Green spoke to Robert Lopez, who was the principal of Tahoe Hemp, and told him he needed a special use permit to grow new crops on that site because it's owned public. By the way, we're not sure whether or not a special permit was even needed. And then finally, Ms. Bollinger later on said, we have some real questions with this. We need to figure out from the Nevada Department of Agriculture as to how their position was because they had the grant. For the record, the Nevada Department of Agriculture issued a permit. State Lands, who funded the thing, never told the DA or the city that they were going to revoke the financing because of this was somehow invalidated the agreement they had for that funding. And then the final point I want to make is the damages in this case. Our expert, a renowned economist here in town named Eugene Larimore, did our expert opinion, did a very detailed analysis, and came up with the first-year damages for Tahoe Hemp of $28 million. That was a fairly large amount, but I think she did a good job on it. Conversely, your expert that presented the expert opinion to this court said, first he says, as mentioned above, I'm not an expert in hemp farming. However, based on some of the websites I have cited as well and others, the costs associated with hemp production are very high. He goes on, to reiterate, I have no opinion on the economic damages to the plaintiff, but I am of the opinion that the Larimores should be disregarded. So he doesn't even say that, he pretty much acknowledges there are damages. So I think a $400,000 settlement in light of a potential reversal by the Supreme Court and going back to court and proving up our damages, I think $400,000 at this point would be it's a very major concession for my client. But it's also, I think it's a good investment by the city.
Sorry for that's the best we can do to tell people their time is up. So
I
thank you
understand.
so much. Is there any further public comment on this item? Denny? Hello? Again?
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada Board and Supervisors and Mayor. Go back to the simplest space that I can through what I've read is to suggest in my mind that both parties were of good faith when they signed the agreement. The fact that hemp was not specifically raised as a crop for the agricultural agreement that was given to the trust family. And I'm going to relate that way, it's just easier. But the deal is that as soon as money was suggested and options towards hemp or other crops that weren't specifically not allowed, that the original agreement was clear enough to me to suggest that it was based on the historical planting of that individual and the family at the time the agreement was made. Hemp was not one of their historical or base foundation crops. Cattle was part of it for grazing. Certain area was allowed for their farming, and certain allowed for open space and the availability of transit to the open space by public. Those were the parts of the agreement that to me suggest that hemp wasn't part of it, and if it was going to be, it needed to be specially considered. We shouldn't be on the line having to fight them over that. And if they wanted to change something and they wanted to fight it, I feel like we're being held hostage. We don't have the funding for the type of legal fees that this could cause the community. The group that's on the opposing side, as I hate to say opposing side, but the legal aspects for the other side of things, perspective-wise, are great attorneys. They were picked just because of that, but they're also very expensive attorneys. City can't say that our attorneys aren't good, but we can't keep funding a long-range, long-term fight with individuals. To have to settle with people I think are wrong morally and ethically, stepping outside of the agreement that was in good faith by both parties originally, I think is unfair to the city. And I think that I'd like to say shame on them, but I understand it's free enterprise. They can ask for what they want. Whether we should have to bend over and grant everybody something because they're going to threaten to sue us is unfortunate, but it's true. I hate to see the settlement having to be put out by the city. I don't think we've done anything wrong, and we've done everything we could to support and encourage the maintenance of what they were doing originally and have access for the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment on this item? Please state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Robert Lopez, and I'm a part owner of Tahoe Hemp. And basically, Judge Wilson's decision saying that, first of all, he did say that hemp was an agricultural product and that, you know, we were in compliance with using that property for agricultural purposes. But then he went on to say he threw the case out because he said there would be waste created from the project. Well, there would be, hemp is a cleansing crop. When it's grown, it cleanses, it cleans the soil of any impurities. So that would be beneficial to any further growing crops or anything on the land. It would be beneficial. We did do a walkthrough with Ann Bollinger, and Ben was there initially to assess the project, and we came up with Allison McKenzie, a law firm, was there as well, and we agreed to address that situation of after the land was used. We would create a bond with a certain amount of funding to go in and rehabilitate the property after we had used it. So that was all already pre-agreed to, and then he said, well, there's going to be excess waste. Well, that would be taken care of through that reclamation process. So there was, I feel that that was a very bad decision by Judge Wilson.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
That's about it right there.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have any further public comment? Okay, seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board? Supervisor Giomi? Nobody, that's what I just asked.
Sure.
I didn't see any. All right, I looked.
I move to reject the settlement offer.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to reject the settlement offer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony today. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 16, which is our non-action items. We'll start with the city manager. Ms. Paulson, do you have a report?
A couple of
Or
things.
anything?
I just wanted to let the board know about some items that will be coming to the next couple of board meetings. On August 18th, HR is going to do an annual report. We had included that in our strategic plan, and so they'll be doing their first annual report. The building needs assessment, that will also be coming, and we'll have Board of Health on that day too. And then on September 1st,
It'd be rough.
Is that what you're telling us? Long day?
yeah, so
Okay.
be prepared for
Long day. Okay.
hopefully not into the night. And then on September 1st, Deputy City Manager Stephanie Hicks will be bringing the strategic plan annual report to the board.
Good job.
That's it.
Okay, does any member of the board have anything they'd like to share? Supervisor Giomi?
I would just like to ask the city manager if we could go back to doing those reports that we were doing before COVID. It was quarterly, right, or every other month? What was it? Where you did IFC and building stuff and new developments and,
I think I was doing
Just-
it every month. Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Highlights.
Because I found that very interesting, and I think,
Hmm.
I don't think this full board has experienced it, just the mayor and I, or the mayor and me, or me and the mayor, whatever's proper English. Sorry. Not a journalism. Me and the mayor, okay, thank you. School teacher, thank you.
My dog spot.
Okay. Supervisor Shooty?
A couple of things. National Night Out on Tuesday was delightful, wonderful, wonderful turnout. And, you know, it's just such a nice celebration of community and nothing quite like the 8 p.m. closing session with all the lights and sirens, and kiddos are so excited, and it was just really fun. So thank you to the different organizations who participated. It was really awesome. And then I also attended the NACO National Conference in Denver a few weeks ago, or outside of Denver. And, you know, there are some good folks in representing counties, and a lot of wonderful ideas, brainstorming, solution sharing, all of those. And, you know, I just left quite inspired and encouraged. And of course, thinking cap is in major spin cycle. But anyway, it was quite wonderful. And as I process all the information, I'll continue to share.
Thank you so much.
Can I just mention, because that brought to light that the 27, 28, and 29 is Nevada NACO's annual conference. And it's in Virginia City this year. Go to the Nevada NACO website and you can register. It's a worthwhile event, even if you don't come to everything. There's a lot of learning to be done. Last year, we had some really great presentations on emergency preparedness, had a really great session on from the Cannabis Control Board at the state, talking about their efforts to control and manage the cannabis process in Nevada. Learned a lot during that presentation. So there's a lot of good programs there. So little beyond 2 or a little under 2 months away. Thank you.
And so I'll be attending the Nevada League of Cities Conference next week. I'll be in Vegas just about the whole week, working on, any legislation or any proposals that will be coming from that. And any information I receive, I will come back and share. I don't know, maybe not at the August 18th meeting. It's looking pretty full, but I probably will try and do that there because I think we'll be bringing our charter review legislation back during that meeting too, so that we can have our final bill draft submission there. And then I'll also be bringing forward from the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I had discussed that the U.S. Health and Human Services has a national program, Move with the Mayors. I have joined that initiative campaign, and so I'll be bringing forward the first 6 activities that I'm going to try. See, I know my braveness to say go out there and get heart healthy and to do half-hour activities. I tried to vary them to actually showcase our community. I think there is so much that I often hear people say there's nothing to do, and I'm like, well, I hope to show you that there is, right? There's a ton of neat activities, and I understand that when is the dodgeball competition coming up? Pretty soon, right? I heard some challenging going on at the Sheriff's Night Out, but there will be a challenge involved. Oh, the K9 competition. So one of the moves with the mayor will include to see if we can do more laps than the K9s with their handlers.
You're
You'll
kidding.
win?
She'll
No, I'm
win.
not kidding. I
She'll
know.
win.
Well, she's going to be on our team.
Okay.
Shh, you're giving away my ringer status. I thought that would be our ringer for the Board of Supervisors with some challenges. I already laid down the gauntlet to the DA's office, and so I hope you'll all join me. I know, right? I don't know. Kelly told me she had some ringers, but I said, I don't know. We have one. But anyway, just in good fun and getting the community out together to maybe just get some mental health going and everything else. So I hope to bring you those flyers and get us going at the next
So for
meeting.
your heart healthy part of this deal, I could share with you pretty awesome yoga and meditation sequences if you want.
Oh.
Yes, I can.
Well, maybe that'll be one of the moves with the mayor in January, some
Sit up here
yoga.
with a straight face.
Yeah, he did that pretty good. He carried it off. Okay, is there anybody else?
No yoga pants.
We're moving past the conversation now. Okay, we're gonna move to agenda item 17, which is our final public comment. Do I have any final public comment? Mr. French?
Mr. French, Carson City, Nevada Board of Supervisors, Mayor. I'd like to finish this day by saying I was exhausted with what I tried to review, and again, my appreciation for all of your considerations to cover this. Also, I'd like to thank Supervisor Gomi for advising me and getting me the number of Rod Rumnell. He is the Wildland Fuel Management Officer of the Fire Department, and he helped answer my questions. There is rhyme and reason to what I found as objectionable originally. He explained and helped me understand the thought behind the process, and that was very appreciative. It was very disrupting to find what I felt was just craziness happening with no consideration, and this guy is sharp. He is not only sharp, but he's communicative, and he said it in a way that I could understand it, which is always helpful. I'd also like to say I was able to enjoy that National Night Out as well, and the families involved. I mean, the kids were dancing, the parents were dancing. There were smiles just about everywhere you could look. I didn't wear a mask for the first time in ages in a community-type activity, and that just felt so freeing and so wonderful. And the fire departments and all of the agencies that participated, from social services to rescue to law enforcement type situation. I really appreciate it. But I'd also like to clear up one thing with the mayor, if I will be able to, with the time I have, is I'm not opposed to housing that's specific for lower income. I would just like to encourage the community of renters to see their part in helping this community maintain our workforce that is not financially able to pay the rents that are out there now. It's supply and demand, and that's well understood. But unless we get all of those particular individuals involved, whether or not you give them a prize for taking in a certificate of payment by an organization like HUD or such or not, that we would encourage people to at least consider some of their rental space for such. And remember that we depend on each other and we have to work as a team. And sometimes it comes in conflict with making the money that we all would like to make. I'm in the spot where I can't rent my space for what would allow me to get into another one. So thank you very much for your consideration. And again, thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other comments? I don't see any. If there's no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you again for a good meeting.